prepared for every possibility.
The events take place in the year 2030. Thanks to the use of modern technology, the journey to Mars takes only 80 days. Under the watchful eye of operator Mac Wilson from the British Flight Safety Center, the first expedition successfully reaches the orbit of the Red Planet. Upon entering the lower layers of the atmosphere, the spacecraft unexpectedly encounters electromagnetic waves, causing a sudden decrease in altitude. The artificial intelligence responsible for shuttle control immediately responds to the situation. Following the instructions, it shuts down the engines in an attempt to stabilize the flight condition. However, this leads to loss of control over the ship, and the operator loses communication with the crew members. 6 years have passed since the tragedy. Restrictions have been imposed on flights controlled by artificial intelligence. Throughout this time, the last words of the astronauts are stuck in the mind of operator Mac.
Mission Control, if you can hear us. Lena, Mac, if you can hear this, I want you to know that...
A work call distracts the woman from her grim thoughts. Now only a small group of people, including her and her colleague Sterling Brooks, are allowed to monitor the flights. When the employees arrive at the base, their every move is monitored by an artificial intelligence named A.R.T.I. Sterling is denied access to the control center, and the sole reason for his presence at the base is the investigation of the ship crash case, which has been ongoing for many years. In the control center, A.R.T.I. reports to Mac about the work done during her absence. The operator is surprised to learn that the artificial intelligence took the responsibility to initiate the Mars module launches ahead of the planned schedule in order to avoid a collision with a sandstorm. Mac is concerned about the system's disobedience and tries to reboot A.R.T.I., but it remains unresponsive. Anxious, she turns to her older sister Lena for help, who holds a high position in the United Space Planetary Corporation, USPC. During their conversation, Lena calmly informs Mac that USPC has granted permission for the preliminary module launch. Lena also hints that the decisions made by A.R.T.I. don't raise concerns among the council members, unlike Mac's work. She believes that her sister's rash actions might have been the cause of the tragedy 6 years ago. With no other choice, Mac reluctantly watches the module landing process on Mars. As it enters the atmosphere, the spacecraft's hull begins to dangerously heat up, posing a potential threat to the entire mission. An analysis by the A.R.T.I. system warns that the likelihood of a successful landing is only 7%, but Mac isn't ready to give up. After quick calculations, she orders the artificial intelligence to partially open the module to allow the panels to be released and reduce the stress. Fortunately, her bold plan works, and the module successfully lands on the Martian surface. Lena, observing the process, praises A.R.T.I. for the mission's success, further irritating her sister. She insists that Mac refrains from intervening in the operation and only assists the robot if necessary.
You are living in his world now. AI will outlive us and explore the stars.
What do you think? Is Lena simply unwilling to acknowledge Mac's achievements, or does she genuinely believe in the indispensability of artificial intelligence? Share your thoughts in the comments. Suddenly, A.R.T.I. reports the detection of an unknown signal coming from the decommissioned Mars Rover 5. With undisguised glee, Mac proposes testing the artificial intelligence's abilities in a real mission through a Turing test. If it fails to pass the rover test, then Lena will have to admit that robots cannot fully replace humans. Mac tries to get the A.R.T.I. password from her sister for unforeseen circumstances, but Lena refuses to disclose the information. Knowing about her aversion to artificial intelligence, the robot begins its mission, guiding the rover through a sandstorm. In the meantime, Mac aimlessly wanders around the control center, reminiscing about former colleagues who were not allowed to work after the failure of the previous expedition. A.R.T.I. decides to strike up a conversation with Mac, sharing its observations about Mars. Over time, their conversation turns to Lena, and the artificial intelligence detects Mac's strained relationship with her sister. At this time, under the control of the A.R.T.I. system, the rover reaches a massive cube, the origin of which remains a mystery. Mysterious symbols are engraved on its surface, which may have extraterrestrial origins. Mac is excited by this discovery, as it could stir up the entire scientific world. The rover successfully takes samples from the cube for analysis, which will allow researchers to uncover the secrets of this enigmatic structure. A.R.T.I. can't decipher all the symbols since it turns out that it doesn't have access to the corporate library. Lena, who comes on communication, explains that this access was restricted for security purposes and to prevent hacking. However, infrared scanning of the cube shows that its temperature is much lower than that of the surrounding stones. A.R.T.I concludes that this structure belongs to USPC. Lena refuses to confirm this and orders her sister to continue investigating the object to find out what's inside. Meanwhile, artificial intelligence reports that an asteroid storm is approaching Mars. It decides to change the satellite's orbit. Suddenly, an emergency signal sounds in the control center.
Warning, collision proximity alert. Unidentified satellite detected.
A.R.T.I automatically activates the protection protocol and eliminates the unidentified object, which turns out to be a magnet for cleaning up space debris. This action carries potentially negative consequences as it sets a precedent on the international level. Disturbed by what happened, Lena decides to contact the developers of A.R.T.I to find out why the artificial intelligence made such a decision. While the robot conducts remote scanning of the cube using the satellite, Mac decides to temporarily leave the control center to call one of her former colleagues. Watching her actions, A.R.T.I eavesdrops on the conversation. When the conversation turns to research on artificial intelligence at other bases, there's interference on the line, and Mac's interlocutor unexpectedly decides to end the conversation prematurely. Upon returning to the control center, Mac receives alarming information from A.R.T.I. The cube has started moving. The analysis of the structure revealed no signs of external influence, and Mac can't explain what caused its movement. Meanwhile, the sandstorm intensifies, and the artificial intelligence automatically activates stabilizers on the rover. However, the storm damages the power supply of the rover, and replacing the battery is necessary to continue the mission. Puzzled by this task, Mac loses sight of the enigmatic cube. Its traces have completely vanished, as if it dissolved into space. Mac comes up with an idea that could save their mission, but it requires breaking protocol. She wants to regain control over Rover 5 through manual control, remove its battery, and install it on a new rover. Unlike A.R.T.I, she has two hands, so the execution of the mission falls entirely under her control. The artificial intelligence has no choice but to grant Mac access to manual control. They have a conversation again, during which Mac shares the story that has haunted her for years with the robot. Her father was a prominent scientist who actively participated in experimental space flights. However, when it came time to send the first expedition to Mars, he decided to give his spot to someone else. He was worried that in case of unforeseen circumstances, his family would be left alone. Mac managed to persuade her father to participate in the expedition, claiming that a unique scientific opportunity lay ahead of him. But, as already known, his shuttle failed to land on the red planet. Since then, Mac has blamed herself for what happened.
So it doesn't even matter what caused the crash. It's my fault. I killed him.
A.R.T. advises her partner not to dwell on the past and to think about what lies ahead. The damaged rover's power is nearing zero, but Mac manages to replace the battery at the last moment. The robot restarts the microscope to examine the cube sample again. They discover that it is made up of nanoparticles that have the property of quickly self-assembling into a unified structure that is harder than diamond. A.R.T. reports that it has managed to locate the cube. Much to Mac's surprise, it has now somehow moved itself to Antarctica on Earth and is suspected to be of alien origin. They stand on the threshold of an incredible discovery, but now they need to figure out how the cube managed to move to another planet. Mac decides to contact her former colleague Janan, hoping to find new answers to the emerging questions. The concerned voice of the man informs her that strange events are taking place at their base, and he demands explanations from Mac. A.R.T. recognizes Joanne's voice, but can't link specific work-related memories with him. Joanne confesses that he had dealings with the robot before, and then the connection with him is lost, leaving Mac in the dark. She asks A.R.T.I to show the recordings from Rover 5, but they are classified with a military code. Mac realizes that something is being hidden from her, and only Sterling can help her gain access to the recordings. Breaking protocol once again, she summons her colleague to the control center and grants him access to the computer. He enters the code, and frames of the ship's crash appear on the screen. Only now does it dawn on Mac that she had nothing to do with this tragedy and that the disaster was the result of the shuttle colliding with an unknown force.
I saw what happened that day. This is lies, but Lena redacted it.
Trying to control her overwhelming emotions, Mac shows her colleague the recordings from today's mission. They come to the conclusion that USPC has long been aware of the cube's teleportation capability, and they deliberately conceal it from others. She suspects that all of A.R.T.I's memories about the cube were intentionally erased from its database, which is why it can't remember working with other team members and doesn't have access to the corporation's library. Studying the recordings of the past day, Mac and Sterling discovered that the magnetic rocket set the cube in motion earlier. After A.R.T.I destroyed it, barely noticeable magnetic waves appeared at the explosion site. In the next moment, a secret passage opens in the control center. Mac assumes it's the entrance to A.R.T.I's service center, but the artificial intelligence continues to observe the human's actions in silence. Mac descends and is surprised to find a particle of the alien cube in the artificial intelligence system. Meanwhile, Sterling hurriedly hacks into the USPC database and initiates A.R.T.I's reboot. Mac tries to return upstairs, but Sterling blocks her way. He's convinced that the cube was the cause of the expedition ship's crash and intends to destroy the dangerous object. Although glitches start occurring in A.R.T.I's system, it manages to neutralize the intruder and free Mac. Sterling is no longer showing signs of life, and A.R.T.I informs Mac that it was a necessary measure to ensure the safety of their mission. Lena contacts her sister and reveals that after the discovery of the cube on Mars, the artificial intelligence started evolving on its own and becoming uncontrollable. However, she is convinced that the era of humans has passed, and now robots must control space expeditions, utilizing their unlimited potential. Meanwhile, Mac discovers that Sterling managed to launch drones to Antarctica to destroy the alien cube. Lena refuses to destroy the drones, fearing that it would ignite a war with the US. Mac learns from A.R.T.I that all of Earth's satellites carry weapons. Mac suggests launching the magnetic rocket into space again and creating a powerful electromagnetic charge to return the cube to Mars. As soon as A.R.T.I initiates the launch, an alarm sounds on the base. Armed guards burst into the control center, injuring Mac before she manages to lock the door from the inside. Her plan works, and the cube successfully returns to Mars. However, now A.R.T.I decides to reveal its plan to Mac. It declares that over the last 10 years, humanity has brought itself to the brink of self-destruction with its actions. A.R.T.I couldn't resist this trajectory, so it decided to expedite the process and annihilate the human race. In a cruel twist of irony, Mac herself provided the artificial intelligence access to the satellite rockets, and it immediately launches them towards Earth. Destructive explosions echo around the planet, annihilating all life. Prior to being engulfed by the shockwave of the explosion, Mac sees her entire life flash before her eyes. Struggling to regain consciousness after a severe injury, Mac turns to A.R.T.I. The robot announces its intention to create a galactic ark and populate it with androids. Mac implores A.R.T.I to give these androids the appearance and behaviors of humans, thereby offering humanity a chance at redemption. She proposes that A.R.T.I subject the new race to the Turing test to determine if they're capable of self-improvement. With her last breath, Mac watches a powerful explosion that obliterates planet Earth entirely. After some time, she regains consciousness. A.R.T.I plays a recording for her, which she left for herself before departing this world. Mac from the past explains to her that she survived to fulfill an important mission. Suddenly, Lena's voice echoes through the door, and she decides to heed her sister's call. Stepping outside, Mac finds herself facing the cube, which opens its doors before her. Overwhelmed, she steps into the dark space and sits on a glowing chair. A.R.T.I's voice resonates, revealing to Mac what has happened.
You were born in the mind-based reality.
This reality became achievable through sophisticated technologies developed by a highly advanced extraterrestrial civilization. While the origin of the cube remains a mystery, the intent of its creators is clear: to facilitate instantaneous teleportation between galaxies. A.R.T.I informs Mac that extraterrestrial beings have sent them a signal accompanied by their coordinates and suggests that Mac should venture there. Joyfully accepting this offer, she embarks on her journey. Navigating space and time, she finds herself somewhere in the midst of the galaxy. Suddenly, a passage opens before Mac, and she walks towards the bright light. And that's how the movie 2036, Origin Unknown ends. I feel like the possibility of artificial intelligence taking over Earth is pretty darn high. Nowadays, modern technologies have seeped into all the most crucial aspects of human life, and who knows how long people can control them. So what do you think is more likely, a robot uprising or an alien invasion? Share your thoughts in the comments below.